Hi, I'm Brent. Welcome to Theoretically Practical. This is the weekly one shot, and the topic at hand is my first torch setup. You know, Fisher-Price doesn't make one, but Radnor makes a pretty damn good alternative. So, I don't suggest you go out and buy a used set. I know there's a lot of used sets on Craigslist. I know there's a lot of used sets on Facebook Marketplace and all these other things. You don't know the life they've lived. And that can be dangerous. And it can kill you in the case of acetylene. It is explosive, it is dangerous, but you can handle it safely. So this is a Radnor model 250-80-540. I think they call this their middle duty torch kit. I looked up the equivalent of it today, which I think the only difference is it's got plastic handles instead of the metal handles. I saw it for sale for $269. That's the regulators, that's the torch end, that's a tip for a number 0 welding head, and a cutting torch. So it's really everything you need for a basic setup. And I think that's a screaming deal compared to buying a $50 or $100 kit from Craigslist that maybe you gotta rebuild the regulator. Maybe all the O-rings are bad and you gotta figure out the size. Maybe there's a hole in the hose and hopefully you can see it, but maybe you can't. So, you're at the welding supply store, you said, I want the Radnor middle of the road kit, which is a middle duty kit, which is great. You definitely want to get a cart for your tanks. If you can find a used cart, I'd buy it because there's not much to it. It's not a special thing. It, can't go bad. Buy the cart used. If it'll save you a few bucks, that's fine. You're also going to need tanks. This is a 60 oxygen tank for 60 cubic feet of oxygen. And this is a B acetylene tank for B cubic feet of acetylene. Or whatever it is. Doesn't matter. Trade sizes, man. Don't get me started. So, the thing to know is when you buy the tanks, you own sort of the rights to your tanks. I guess it's a strange way to put it, but when you go to swap these tanks out when they're empty, they will not fill your tanks. Maybe somebody does, I've never seen it. You tell them, you go into the store at the welding supply place, or in my case, there's a tank swap depot out back of a auto parts store that'll swap tanks for you. You tell them what you want. You don't bring them in the store, you'll get yelled at for that for sure. And they'll swap them out with full tanks. If you have a bottle with the cover on it, bring the cover back and stuff, get it swapped out. That'll be fine. So you own the tanks, but you swap them out. Kind of like with propane tanks in a lot of places these days. You don't get them filled that instant on your time. Part of that is because you just can't have acetylene filling facilities everywhere. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So you've gone to the welding supply store and maybe you put a package deal together where you get everything you need and maybe some rod and some other stuff. And of course a pair of safety glasses. I really like these because they have a darkened lens, but you can open them up and see what you're doing. And they've held up really well for me for a long amount of time, except that the stretchy, every one of these I've had, the stretch just goes away. I don't get it, but we're not going to get on that. So you're home. You've connected up the tanks. You did remember to get a acetylene tank wrench. It'll probably look like this. It's got square holes in it. Don't use a pair of pliers, use one of these. And when you go bring the tank back, don't give it to the depot guys either. They probably won't tell you that you took it or that you left it on the tank. So you've got it connected up and you're ready to go, except no. That acetylene tank has been in your car bouncing and jouncing around. Maybe it's been upright, maybe it hasn't. It needs to sit in an upright position for a minimum of 1 hour before you crack that seal. I prefer to leave it overnight because that's what I was told, but I looked up, OSHA says an hour. It's probably fine to just leave it an hour. So there's like a matrix inside of this. I don't know, I think it's like sand with ammonia. In any case, you want to let that all settle out the way it's supposed to before you open this up. So you've waited your hour, you got your tank set up, you're excited at this point. I know I was. Maybe torches aren't exciting for everybody, but hey, you're watching this channel, you're probably excited about torches. So you connect up your oxygen and your acetylene. And then what you're going to want to do is crack open the acetylene valve. And with the oxygen valve, every time you open it all the way. And that's because the valve in it double seals. So until you crack it all the way to the top, your valve isn't as sealed as it could. So now you've got that and that. You've got some pressure in your regulators showing, or you should have if you didn't get empty tanks. I've never had that happen. I'm just trying to make a bad joke. So we're gonna go ahead and crank the oxygen up to, we're gonna say 20 pounds on the scale, and just leave it there for a minute. And then we're gonna go to the acetylene and we're gonna crank it up to, we'll say 5 pounds on the scale. You'll notice with the acetylene, after 15 PSI, it goes red. Red means danger, don't do it, don't turn it up that high. Usually with welding and stuff like that, I end up running it around 10 pounds. That just seems to be what works for me. You can look all this up. There's great videos on how to oxyacetylene weld, much better than anything I can produce. So then, now that that's all set, we're gonna close these valves all the way down. We're gonna close this valve as well. And we're just gonna, either you can use soapy water on all your connections to check and make sure they don't leak, or you can just walk away for 10 or 15 minutes. The valves should not be moving. So if you had, like, let's say your oxygen had this tiniest slow leak, well, that's a lot bigger than a slow leak, but you'd slowly see this move, or if your acetylene has a leak, your acetylene would go down. I would say definitely do that or the soapy water. The first time you set it up, I would definitely use soapy water, because a lot of these connections you're never going to take apart again unless you're replacing something, so they should stay fine. All right, so you've done that. You're great. Everything's happy. Well, now open up the tanks again, remembering to open the acetylene a half a turn and the oxygen all the way till it stops. You don't have to murder it open either. You don't have to murder them shut. This isn't 8 million foot-pounds of torque. It's just till it's gently open. In this case, just a half a turn or 3/4 of a turn. You do your welding. You get your torch out. Oh, look at me. I'm a super welder. I do oxyacetylene. It's great. Yeah. You've been wearing your goggles, because even though you see people not using goggles with these and it won't make you blind and it might not give you a headache today, it's damaging your eyes, just wear the proper protection. It's cheap. It probably comes with the kit. I don't know. Anyway, so now you're done welding. So what do? You go back and you shut both the tanks off fully. All right? All the way off on the oxygen, and it should just be a half or 3/4 turn off there. And then you're gonna open up your acetylene valve on your torch there and just let that acetylene out till it goes all the way down to 0 on your regulator. Close that. Don't leave it open. Close it back up. And again, with these, they're O-ring seals. Don't crank the life out of them. You wanna be gentle with them, but firm. Do the same thing with the oxygen. Don't smoke while you're doing this either. That'd be a stupid idea. All right, the oxygen's fully released. Close that valve again. And then you just want to back out both of your regulators until they should be nice and loose. Don't back them out the whole way. I think there might be something inside of there that can fall out. I've never done it, but just back them up. I think the new plastic ones, you can't overdo it, but these you can. So, and that's it. And then you want to store it. Now, if you, like me, do a bunch of welding, grinding, and stuff like that, where I store my torch is not in the line of sight or the line of fire of those things. I don't want this being covered with grinding, flying metal, hard particles. Be cautious with your hose. Don't walk on your hose. Don't kink your hose. Treat it with respect, because again, this can be dangerous if treated incorrectly. So you just want to be cautious about that and really take care of it. The other good thing about doing the trick I showed you of putting some pressure in it and just letting it sit is that if anywhere in the length of your hose has a pinhole leak or something that you can't see, and maybe it doesn't show up on visual inspection, you will know. You'll see that it's leaking, and you'll know that you have to go back with the soapy water and check every single connection and be very thorough about it. So that's really about it with the oxyacetylene torch setup. If you do any sort of mechanics work in New England, sooner or later you'll need this. But if you only do mechanics work and you just use this as a heat source to loosen freed bolts and stuff like that, you don't plan on welding with it and definitely don't plan on cutting with it, you can get a oxypropylene setup, not propane, propylene, and that is close to the heat. I don't know the actual temperatures, maybe we'll put them down there, but it provides a good amount of heat for that sort of thing, except that propylene is much, much more stable and it's much, much more safe. So I would say that if you think you can get away with a oxypropylene setup instead of an oxyacetylene setup, go that route for sure, because free safety is the best kind of safety. But if you need an oxyacetylene setup, go out, find it, get it, know what you're getting into. Be careful and have fun. This torch has gotten me out of some binds, I can tell you that. And that's really it for today. So until next time, subscribe.